Have you ever felt that the more deeply you think, the more distant you feel from others? That the more you understand, the less people seem willing to listen? You're not imagining it. Society has often been uncomfortable with deep thinkers, not because they're wrong, but because they see things others prefer to ignore. History shows this clearly. From Socrates to Galileo, from Nikola Tesla to many other brilliant minds, these thinkers were often silenced, laughed at, or pushed aside. Not because they lacked intelligence, but because their ideas made people uncomfortable. Schopenhauer, a brutally honest philosopher, once said that intelligence can feel like a curse, because the clearer you see the world, the more isolated you become. But why does this happen? Why does society resist people who think differently? The answer lies in how the human mind works. Imagine this. When you stand next to someone physically strong, you might admire their strength. If someone is rich, you might envy them, but you don't feel personally attacked. However, when you meet someone who is intellectually superior, something strange happens. Psychologists call this the mirror effect. A deep thinker doesn't just offer new ideas, they reflect back the mental limits of those around them. And that makes people uncomfortable. Even without saying much, a deep thinker can make others feel exposed. Unlike strength or wealth, which are external, intelligence is deeply personal. It's connected to how we see ourselves, our beliefs, our ideas, our identity. So when someone challenges those ideas, it feels like they're challenging us as people. This is why, throughout history, deep thinkers have often been left out or misunderstood. Their ideas don't just challenge society, they challenge egos. And most people by nature will do anything to protect their ego from discomfort. Think about your own life. Have you ever tried sharing a deep or complex idea only to be met with blank stares or awkward silence? Maybe you've noticed how people quickly change the topic when the conversation gets too real. This isn't just bad timing, it's a defense mechanism. When faced with deep thinking, some minds shut down. Instead of being curious, people resist. Instead of engaging, they dismiss. Interestingly, research shows that in social settings, confidence is often valued more than intelligence. People are more attracted to those who sound sure of themselves, even if what they're saying isn't that deep. So here's a question for you. Have you ever held back a thought because you felt others just wouldn't get it? This is why charismatic but simple thinkers often gain more attention than deep thinkers who speak with nuance. Throughout history, we've seen this pattern. Popular leaders, motivational speakers, and viral influencers tend to rise by telling people what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. Meanwhile, those who question widely accepted beliefs often struggle to connect with a large audience. This is the paradox of intelligence. The more someone searches for truth, the more disconnected they may feel from the majority. The mirror effect doesn't just reveal society's limitations, it shows why change is so hard. But it raises a bigger question. If intelligence feels so threatening to others, is there any scientific proof that people actually fear it? Surprisingly, modern neuroscience supports this idea. Studies show that when people feel intellectually inferior, a part of their brain called the amygdala, responsible for detecting fear and threats, becomes highly active. In simple terms, deep thinking doesn't just confuse people, it can actually scare them. But why would intelligence trigger the same response as danger? It comes down to how our brains evolved. For most of human history, survival wasn't about being the smartest, it was about being accepted by the group. Our ancestors lived in tribes where fitting in meant safety. Being rejected by the group could lead to isolation and eventually danger. Because of this, our brains are wired to value social acceptance over intellectual growth. So when a deeply intelligent person enters a social space, they often disrupt the balance without meaning to. Their presence challenges beliefs, breaks social norms, and changes group dynamics. To the brain, it feels like a threat, not from a dangerous animal, but from a person who might make you question everything. That's why many deep thinkers feel isolated. It's not because they lack people skills, but because in a world that values fitting in, their intelligence makes them stand out. A 2021 study from Stanford University found something even more surprising. People are less threatened by deep thinkers in one-on-one conversations, But in group settings, the fear response increases sharply. Why? Because in groups, social status matters more. People aren't just reacting to intelligence. They're reacting to how they look next to that intelligence. If someone feels, so here's a question for you. Have you ever shared a new or uncomfortable truth only to be shut down, not because you were wrong, but because others didn't want to hear it? Deep thinkers often bring up ideas that challenge the way people think. But in today's digital world, this has become even harder. Social media, driven by algorithms, rewards quick reactions over deep thinking. Content that is emotional, dramatic, or controversial spreads faster than thoughtful, well-reasoned arguments. If you look at the most viral posts, they are usually short, catchy, and sometimes even misleading. Meanwhile, deep thinkers struggle because their ideas are complex and not easy to shrink into bite-sized content. This means our society is shifting. Entertainment is winning over enlightenment. We're seeing fewer thoughtful discussions and more attention-grabbing sound bites. For deep thinkers, this creates a real challenge. Not only are their ideas hard to share online, but they also face a world that values speed and simplicity over depth and truth. So what does this really mean for those who think deeply? The rejection of intelligence isn't just a social issue. It's biological, psychological, and cultural. It's wired into human nature, strengthened by group behavior, and now magnified by technology. But that doesn't mean deep thinkers should stop sharing their ideas. Instead, it means they need to be aware of the forces working against them. If society resists intelligence, what does it actually embrace? The answer is comfort. People prefer predictability and easy truths over hard realities. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer had a unique view on this. While many saw intelligence as a blessing, he saw it as a burden. He believed the smarter someone is, the more likely they are to feel disconnected from the world. Why? Schopenhauer built his philosophy on an idea he called the will, a blind emotional force that drives most human behavior. Most people live by the will to survive. They chase comfort, pleasure, and routine. But highly intelligent people develop what he called the will to truth. They don't just want to live, they want to understand, even if that truth is painful or isolating. This difference creates a deep divide. While most people find meaning in social life, entertainment, and simple pleasures, deep thinkers often feel empty or bored with these things. They see them as distractions from the bigger questions in life. Schopenhauer believed that the more a person understands human nature, the harder it becomes for them to connect with others. Why? Because they see through the lies. They notice the small talk, the ego games, and the polite dishonesty in everyday life. Deep thinkers value truth over appearances, and that can make normal social interactions feel fake or shallow. They crave deeper conversations, but most people avoid those and prefer to stay on the surface. This disconnect makes deep thinkers feel lonely, bored, or misunderstood. They often question the point of chasing money, status, or even relationships, while others are obsessed with these things. Because of this, they may seem cold or distant, not because they don't care, but because they see life from a completely different perspective. So here's something to think about. Have you ever felt like you were the only one asking deeper questions while everyone else seemed content with distractions? Most people would rather avoid uncomfortable truths, and Schopenhauer understood why. He compared intelligence to a heightened sense of awareness, a gift that often feels like a curse. He once wrote, "A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial." His reasoning was simple. The more you understand, the harder it is to ignore what's wrong in the world. The more aware you are of life's flaws, the more difficult it becomes to find happiness in it. In Schopenhauer's view, happiness and intelligence had an inverse relationship. He believed that ignorance, not wisdom, was the true path to happiness. This may explain why so many deep thinkers throughout history, like Blaise Pascal and Franz Kafka, struggled with depression, existential anxiety, and a sense of isolation. They weren't broken. They were simply too aware. But Schopenhauer didn't just point out the problem. He offered solutions too. First, he urged deep thinkers to embrace solitude. He didn't see being alone as a punishment, but as a privilege. Solitude, he believed, was a space for intellectual and creative growth, not something to be feared. Instead of seeking approval from society, he advised intellectuals to focus on their inner world. Second, he recommended finding like-minded individuals. If you think differently, trying to fit into mainstream society can be exhausting. Schopenhauer encouraged deep thinkers to connect with others who share their curiosity through books, philosophy, or small intellectual communities. Third, he urged thinkers to engage with the world wisely. Don't blind. The truth is, society isn't designed to nurture deep thinking. It's built for stability. Most people choose comfort over truth. That's why simple conversations, easy answers, and repetitive content fill our social spaces. But why is comfort chosen over intellectual growth, even when deeper thinking could lead to real progress? The answer lies in human psychology and how our institutions shape our minds from a young age. At its core, the human brain craves certainty and predictability. Evolution taught us to avoid discomfort because it felt like a threat to survival. Psychologists call this cognitive ease. The brain prefers simple, familiar information. It's quicker to process and feel safer. When we hear something complex or unfamiliar, it takes more effort, and our brain instinctively labels it as a potential threat. There's also something called system justification theory, which explains why people tend to defend the way things are, even if it's not working for them. It's easier to believe that the current system is right than to accept that it might be broken. So here's a question for you. Have you ever noticed how hard it is to talk about deep or uncomfortable truths, even when you know they matter? Instead of questioning authority or outdated beliefs, most people prefer to rationalize them. Change feels too uncertain and scary. This is why groupthink happens. People would rather go along with widely accepted beliefs than risk being rejected for challenging them. Because of this, the majority often rejects intellectual dissent, even when it is based on truth. This deep psychological need for comfort over complexity is why intellectuals, philosophers, and scientists often struggle to gain wide acceptance, especially during their own lifetimes. Look at today's digital world. Who gets the most attention on social media? It's not the intellectuals, but those who can shrink complex ideas into viral, feel-good sound bites. Thought-provoking discussions have a hard time catching on because depth takes time, while viral content is instant, emotional, and easy to digest. Algorithms reward engagement, and nothing engages people more than controversy, outrage, or humor. This often sidelines thoughtful, rational conversations. Echo chambers develop, where people only see information that supports their existing beliefs. This makes them resistant to new ideas. In this environment, deep thinkers who challenge the mainstream often get ignored, misunderstood, or even attacked. This rejection of deep thinking doesn't just happen online. It starts in the very institutions that shape us. In schools, intelligence is supposedly valued, but obedience is actually rewarded. Students who memorize and repeat information succeed, while those who question or challenge authority are often labeled troublemakers. At work, companies don't always favor the most intelligent or innovative employees. They favor those who fit in and support the existing power structure. In politics, Amriel shape modern philosophy, proving that society often rejects deep thinkers in the present only to embrace them in the future. Tesla was a visionary. He dreamed of free energy for the world, wireless electricity, and technological advancements that could have revolutionized human civilization. But society, and more specifically those in power, saw his ideas as a threat. Industrialists like Thomas Edison and J.P. Morgan profited from selling electricity, so Tesla's idea of free energy was shut down. Despite his genius, Tesla died alone in a small hotel room, forgotten and broke. While others built fortunes using his stolen ideas, his life is a perfect example of how society often rewards businessmen and marketers over true visionaries. Alan Turing's work in cryptography helped end World War II. His code-breaking skills saved millions of lives, and his theories in computing became the foundation of modern artificial intelligence. Yet instead of being honored, he was persecuted for his personal life. In 1952, he was chemically castrated for being gay, a decision that led to his tragic suicide at just 41 years old. Today, Turing is recognized as a hero, but in his time, society discarded him despite his incredible contributions. While most historical deep thinkers were men, Hypatia of Alexandria was a rare exception. A philosopher, mathematician, and astronomer who challenged the male-dominated intellectual world of ancient Rome, she taught scientific reasoning and rational thought, which put her at odds with the religious authorities. In 415 AD, a mob of religious extremists brutally murdered her, seeing her as a threat to their power. Her story highlights a crucial pattern in history. Intellectual progress is often met with violent resistance. Each of these thinkers shared the same fate. They introduced ideas that were too advanced for their time. They were rejected, ridiculed, or punished while they were alive, but their ideas later became the foundation of human progress. Society doesn't fear intelligence itself. It fears what intelligence represents: change. That raises an important question. If history proves that society resists deep thinkers, what can you do if you're one? Does this mean deep thinkers are doomed to loneliness? Not at all. It just means you need to understand how to navigate society wisely. Not every place or person is ready for deep conversations. Save your most profound thoughts for people who truly appreciate them. You don't need millions of people to understand you, just the right ones. Seek out those who think like you, whether in books, online communities, or intellectual circles. The greatest thinkers in history found ways to make deep ideas accessible. Einstein said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." Learn to communicate your depth without overwhelming others. Schopenhauer once said, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." Deep thinkers see the world differently, and that will always make some people uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean you should stop thinking deeply. Society needs deep thinkers. It just doesn't always know how to embrace them. So if you've ever felt like an outsider because of your thoughts, remember this: you are not alone. While society may fear deep thinkers, it is deep thinkers who push humanity forward. If this video resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced rejection for thinking deeply? Let's start a conversation. And if you want to explore more insights from history's greatest minds, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started.